after you. That will be His Excellency Adam Hitchcock, the former White House Senior Staff Board member of the former Chief of Staff, former Principal Advisor on Strategy and Policy. Please kindly let me know if it is correct, to the Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to the White House. So I think it's the perfect time for you also to continue this conversation, please, dear Mr. Hitchcock. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Castaneda, and thank you, Mahmoud, for pulling this together. I'll try to be brief. What I'm going to try to do is maybe frame up how I see the current administration, the Biden administration, their approach to global economic governance. Obviously it's early in the administration, but I think when you look at the actions they've taken, and what's now been less than a year, I think you're starting to see an approach to global economic governance. And the way I almost analyze it, I think of it as like on 3 levels. I think you need to understand the 5 main crises which they've prioritized. And then once you understand what they've chosen to prioritize, you'll start to see some themes as to how they're responding to those. And then I think based upon those themes, I think you can start to extrapolate out how they'll respond to issues around global economic governance, what they might be trying to accomplish. And in that case, I think you can go in a lot of different directions, but I'll try to keep it brief and just maybe highlight 1 or 2 things with the idea that you could actually really cover a lot more if you can see that sort of chain of decision making. Because having worked in the White House, the most important thing that a White House does is prioritize what they're going to spend time on. You have a huge government, and different parts of the government are able to work on very narrow, specific issues. And then at the same time, the White House is prioritizing these bigger ticket items, if you will. So with that as a frame, talking about the 5 crises that they've prioritized, talking about some of the themes that I've seen emerge there. And then the last part is to sort of extrapolate out and maybe give a couple examples of how I think that might shape their approach to global economic governance. So, the 5 crises that this administration has responded to, and it's interesting, is like, these are almost less of priorities by choice than priorities that were foisted upon them, which is actually what happens quite often when you get elected. Certainly was the case for us when we got elected in the Obama administration. I was there at the beginning in the White House Chief of Staff's office, and was eventually Chief of Staff for the White House Council of Economic Advisors. So with those 5 crises, you can also see them try to build opportunities into that instead of just responding to those. So the 5 crises I see are obviously COVID, right? This is a global issue that you can see that the administration prioritized. They knew it was global from the beginning, but they actually, obviously prioritized it from a domestic perspective around vaccinations, et cetera. But now they're actually taking a much more global approach. The economic challenges was the second thing because of COVID, which the administration views, I think, more through a domestic political lens almost. Related to that, but something that's been long duration, this is the 3rd item, which I'd say the threat to democracy. It's in the US, but also abroad. And you see that with the administration holding their democracy summit this week. The 4th issue, I'd say, racial justice in the United States. And what we've had over the past couple of years is a racial reckoning based upon historic injustices. And this is sort of a long time coming. And I think President Biden takes it very seriously. The administration takes it seriously. And there's also a political rationale. He was elected because of the African-American vote. I don't think that's why he's doing it, but there's a lot of political power in that space. And the last one is, climate, which is obviously a global area that touches everything. And it's an area where I think you're going to see the Biden administration work on 2 tracks here, which is specific things that they're doing in the domestic space, where you see with the Build Back Better plan that they're doing, and then also things you're going to see them do on the international level with the, you saw recently at COP, and then at the beginning of next year rolling out more of their Build Back Better world approach. So with those 5 issues as sort of the priority issues that are really dominating the administration agenda, what are some of the themes that we see in those approaches that might help us inform how they might think about global economic governance? Well, I would say there's three main things that I see. One is the linking of domestic politics, economics, and national security together. And I think you see that with things around like a global minimum tax for corporations. You see the way that they talk about a foreign policy for the middle class. So I think that they don't think of these things as three discrete buckets. If you look at the NSC, they've been very involved in economic issues. So I think that there is a change. It's been sort of a long time coming. I saw it there during the Obama administration, where you can't really segment out, well, this is a domestic political issue, this is an economic issue, and this is an international affairs issue, and state and defense will handle this, Treasury, Commerce, CEA, NEC will handle this, and then on the pure political stuff, well, the White House Chief of Staff's office and Office of Public Engagement, they'll handle that, and our outside political strategists. It's now sort of all commingled. Related to that, I think you see in this administration a continued trend, and this is not meant to be pejorative, of prioritizing politics over policy, meaning that when it comes down to specific policy decisions, I think that domestic politics will play a major factor. And I think part of that is because it goes back to this threat to democracy. I think that they firmly believe that the American democratic system is at risk if somebody like Donald Trump were to be reelected. So I think for them, the question is how much political pain are they willing to pay, price they're willing to pay. And I think with this, they've suffered a lot in their approval ratings, but that was less because of them and more because of Congress dragging out the bipartisan infrastructure bill and then moving on to the Build Back Better plan. And then the last thing the trend that I think you see is, the balancing of, what I consider globalism versus global competition. The way that they're trying to navigate issues like climate and COVID, where you need to work with countries that you might not agree with very often. Obviously, China would be at the top of that list from the administration's perspective, but at the same time, you still have to find ways to work with them because these issues cut across country borders. And I think, another example of that is also like, the decision to separate the global climate portfolio from other issues by having John Kerry sort of go out and handle, be the lead on that. So with those, three themes as an example, and there's probably a couple more I could have listed, but those three sort of stand out to me. I think those three things, what do they mean for global economic governance? Because like I said, there's been some evidence here that's specifically related to global economic governance. But if you were to take those themes and project out, what do I think you might see? Well, there's two that I think are interesting that I was thinking are probably relevant for this, but there's obviously more. I think one is, the US re-engaging with other countries and existing global economic institutions, but also willing to act unilaterally or bilaterally. They can use those institutions to coordinate, for example, the response to international challenges like COVID and climate. COP's a good example. While disappointing on many levels, the US was trying to bring countries to the table there. I think working with multilateral development institutions to scale up the response to the climate crisis is another example. I see this in my investment business where these multilateral development banks are under pressure to increase the scale of their response to the climate challenge and drive investment into places like Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia. I think you also see this in their coordinating how they are responding to China, also using the MDBs, or for example, using the DFC, which was created a few years ago under the Trump administration and maintains bipartisan support. The second thing that I think you see is the financial markets as a policy tool. This is something that has sort of been a long time coming. You saw it under the Clinton administration, a little bit under the Bush, and then I think more so under Obama. And I think the reality is that while financial markets aren't perfect, I should know, I was a policymaker and now I'm a financial market participant. But the financial markets actually have baked into them a lot of values that the West would sort of care about, rule of law, property rights, etc. So that means oftentimes, even in an indirect way, they're advancing the agenda. And I see that in contrast to some other issues with Chinese investment. And I think the US regulators are going to put more pressure on financial institutions to pursue certain agendas around climate, especially. So with that, that's sort of the frame. I think there's a lot more specific areas that I could have raised, and that I'm welcome to hear other people's opinions, but I thought that would be a good way to frame and highlight some of the potential issues around global economic governance.
Thank you very much.